Welcome to Securing America with me, Frank Gaffney, the program that's a kind of owner's manual for protecting the country we love against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to God's glory and that of his kingdom. A man who has been making an outsized contribution to our understanding about the single most serious threat facing our country these days, against which we must make a redoubled effort to protect her, is our first guest. His name is Dr. Bradley Thayer. He has been an academic for decades. He is a prolific author, including an important book about Han supremacism, which I commend to you all, as well as a torrent of extremely provocative but thoughtful pieces in various publications, including The Hill. We're always delighted to catch up with him. He is a member of our Committee on the Present Danger of China, for which I am very grateful, and we look forward to these conversations with him with great enthusiasm. Dr. Bradley Thayer, welcome back to Securing America.
Thank you, Frank. My pleasure.
I want to start by asking you about Shanghai. Brad, we've been told that some 25 million people in China's largest city are being subjected now to, I guess, a second week or more of brutally repressive lockdown in connection with this sort of zero tolerance approach to the COVID 19 pandemic by the Chinese Communist Party. What is up with that and the policy that is underlying it?
Frank, that's an extremely important point that demonstrates the nature of the Chinese regime. So, what we're witnessing in Shanghai, of course, is the totalitarian nature of the Chinese Communist Party laid bare in pursuit of this absurd COVID zero policy that they're determined to pursue. Of course, which is ridiculous because COVID, of course, is not going anywhere. It will always be with us. But the party is determined to crack down to ensure that the virus does not spread again. But that is essentially only the public explanation. Is really the intent is to ensure the party's control over all elements of the local government of Shanghai, which there is concern with Xi that might have independent tendencies. So, this crackdown in Shanghai should be seen at several levels. The epidemiological aspect of it, of course, is the public face. And the brutality that's evinced there is telling enough. But it's really an aspect of control. And that also informs what we have seen with Hong Kong, where the party has cracked down on Hong Kong for political purposes, not necessarily in this instance for COVID. What we witnessed with Wuhan, where the party, of course, where the virus started famously, and again, the naked aggression of the party against its own people was evinced. So we should see what's happening in Shanghai as a human rights disaster for the Chinese people, and it's simply one of many made possible by the COVID epidemic. But when we put it in the long history of the Chinese Communist Party, we really see its true nature.
Yeah, this
Where
is such an important point, Brad. And you mentioned Xi Jinping, of course, the general secretary of the Chinese Communist Party. This factionalism, as I guess it's called, this possibility that there is a Shanghai gang that is threatening his hold on power, his expected ascendancy to a third term when the People's Congress meets in the fall, as an underlying factor in what they're doing here, and the kinds of techniques that they're able to bring to bear. It's not just sealing people into their apartment buildings, which they're doing, or otherwise denying them freedom of movement. It's also, isn't it, the sort of use of these coercive techniques like the social credit system, as they call it, to monitor what people are doing and how they're doing it, that intensifies the level of repression, does it not?
It does indeed, Frank. In essence, information technology makes totalitarianism cheap and very efficient. What Stalin could not accomplish, despite his best efforts, in advanced technology that we're witnessing around the world, of course, but in China, reveals that control of individuals, groups of individuals, but specific individuals, is it's done easily. And so, what we're witnessing with individual QR, essentially identification documents with the COVID passes, etc. Again, the epidemic is being used as an excuse to accelerate already the heavy hand of the Chinese Communist Party. So, as a
Brad,
tool,
can you give us a sense of the toll that it's taking in Shanghai specifically, and the cost more broadly of, as you say, this practice being applied really throughout the country, both the lockdowns and the social credit system monitoring, and if I could just ask you as well about Shanghai being a major port for. China's exporting of goods worldwide. What is it doing to supply chains? All of this locking down.
very important issues, Frank. Of course, this has clearly disrupted the city. Shanghai, of course, is the one of China's major port, of course. And so this disruption is having the knock-on effects on, again, global transportation networks around the world. Obviously, that's going to be contributing to further delays in the United States and contributing to the supply chain crisis that we face here, with additional effects on inflation and additional effects, of course, on our economy. So what's happening in Shanghai, of course, is extremely important, not simply because of the human rights abuses, although that should be identified explicitly, not because of simply because of the pattern that this demonstrates with respect to the behavior of the Chinese Communist Party and their abuse of their own citizens. But thirdly, it demonstrates the willingness of the Chinese Communist Party to drive and to disrupt the global economy. For Xi, control is absolute, even if it comes at the cost of disrupting China's economic relations with the rest of the world. At the same time, of course, the political relationship is disrupted as a result of Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and of course, the actions that we're witnessing in Europe as well as around the world. So the supply chain effect is very significant. And we should expect that this demonstrates, Frank, as we know too well, that China is an unreliable partner. And we should, again, do our utmost to separate ourselves from any type of dependence on the Chinese economy.
Really, it is the height of recklessness to be dependent upon these guys for anything, let alone for as much as we are. And we'll be talking more about this in the latter part of this program with Bill Walton. But, I've had a chance, Brad, to take a look at something that is very, very ominous. And it may be the wellspring of this disease. And its affliction on the Chinese people, as well as obviously the rest of the world. And that is China's interest in biological warfare. There's a speech that was made apparently to an elite group of party cadre by the then Secretary of Defense, Minister of Defense of China, Chi Hao-chen, back in about 20 years ago. And what he laid out was a program of, using biological warfare against us. We're going to talk more about that with Brad Thayer on the other side of a very short break. We're going to visit about its implications, obviously, for the American people, but also, again, for our relationship with the Chinese Communist Party in the meantime. That and more right after this.